What is the best plan? The best plan at 3:30 ish is
Ish.
to watch.
Emphasis on the ish.
Yeah.
Sometimes
ish happens.
it's a tight schedule when we're in the locker room at 2:40 and
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing to do, but we pull it off here, and we're here for you on this fantastic Friday. Like the Cure said, Friday I'm in love here on Orange and Blue today.
Yeah, Friday we're in love. Mace, I'm in love with the sound of my own voice, but I think that says a lot about me more than anything. But how about being in love with this Broncos team and the chances of winning? The great debate rages on. Do they go back to the passing game, or do they run, and then leave it to Russ? What do you think?
It's too bad we're not talking about Mason Rudolph, because I see run. I'm thinking run, Rudolph. Santa's got to make it to town, right?
Exactly, it's perfect.
We discussed this morning when you were on the radio side with Mike Evans. I think you stick with what worked during the 5-game winning streak, and it went askew last week, but I feel like you found a success equation that involved playing a tempo-based game, emphasizing the ground game, letting Russ get to the off schedule beyond structure level quickly where he moves around. And is it incredibly dynamic? No, but it's effective. It turned a team that was a fountain of giveaways into one that protected the ball really well until last Sunday. And by the way, when did the giveaways happen? They happened late, trying to come back, trying to pass the ball more, right?
Yep. Using time of possession.
I think the equation of running to set things up in the red zone and then letting Russ try to find Courtland Sutton in said red zone, I think that's still the best plan.
Yeah, I will say this. Is the problem then Samaje Perine's banged up? How much does that throw a wrench at things? Now, I disagree with you. I think passing should lead the way, and I like that pressure on Russ. I want that pressure on Russ. We'll get to that. Let's put a pin in that. But let's talk about Samaje Perine on that injury report, Mace, and I don't like it. I don't like him showing up late.
You never like it when there's a guy showing up on Friday like that, unless it's an illness, okay? If it's an illness, we're talking about the player often getting over it, right? Like they got a 24-hour flu bug. It's like, oh, get some IVs in, get the IV in, get the fluids in. They're going to be good, right?
Right.
It's a little dicier when you're talking about listed as having a knee injury today.
Right.
Sean Payton did not seem especially concerned when he was asked about Samaje Perine after practice.
Okay.
But he is questionable. So,
yeah,
as Gary Kubiak would say, we're fixing to find out.
We are fixing to find out. What usually happens in these instances, if he's not going to play, they'll activate somebody. So watch for that on a Saturday. But Mace, I want to go back to the passing game. I get what you're saying. I largely agree with what you're saying. But the way the Chargers are set, the 31st pass defense, and the fact that we need to know about Russell, this team could win the next 5 games running the ball. And they could even win a playoff game running the ball. The hell do we learn about that other than Russ can hand off? I want moments where he's got to sling it. And maybe that's me being selfish. Maybe that's a next year conversation. We talked about that a little bit yesterday too.
Yeah, well, if you kind of look at the moments of having to sling it over the last 6 games, I mean, you can basically look at late against Houston, obviously, when you're behind by 2 scores early in the fourth quarter, and behind by 2 scores in the third quarter as well. You're looking at the Minnesota game where you have to sling it because they've stacked the box and they're confusing you with all the Brian Flores looks that you're having to adapt on the fly. They're stacking the box. You don't know what to do. You had to turn and throw the ball then. And you had to pass the ball coming back against Green Bay, and you had to get the passing game going in Buffalo when you were behind in the fourth quarter, right? Are those moments enough to know? Or is it that you want to see what it is the rest of the game? The problem is when you're sitting here and you're right there, you're firmly in playoff contention. You got another break last night when the Steelers face planted against the Patriots, but can you afford to be throwing away a game here potentially? trying to learn something for the long term when your goal is to get from A to B and win this game, get back to 7-6, and then you can lose in Detroit and not be down for the count, right?
Yeah, not take the
I
step
think
back that you would if you
yeah,
lose 2 in a row.
I think there's too much on the line for the team at large to really come out and start kind of junking things and doing something radically different than they've done over the last few weeks, unless it looks like the Minnesota game and you're seeing all those stacked boxes and all those looks that are confusing the Broncos, and you simply have to throw caution to the wind because there's not another option.
Yeah, that is something to consider. Chat room is fired up. Make sure you guys comment and tell us what you want. What do you want? Steven wants us to be on time.
They'll tell us what they want, what they really, really want.
Steven, again, we're working with the Broncos
myself.
schedule, baby. We do as best we can every day. And like I said, in 2024, we're probably going to 4 p.m.
Yes.
So there's that. But, we're figuring this stuff out as we get the Sean Payton thing. Sean Payton does things a little differently, Mace, than usual. And did he sound sick today? He sounds like he's sick.
He said, his voice was really hoarse today.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing, now that being said, it didn't keep him from yelling in practice. We get on Friday, we get to watch most of practice on Friday. Now we're not seeing 11 on 11, but we're seeing can we really say that even the...
Well, Troy Rank said it, so I feel comfortable saying it because I'll just point to Troy.
Yeah.
The play that they wanted to run, and we won't say what the play is, but the play they wanted to run that went to Lucas Kroll, that was seen last Friday. They practiced it last Friday.
They do. So that gives you the area of the field where they're working on on Friday typically. Which it's kind of like we saw in training camp. A lot of red zone, a lot of situational stuff, 2-minute, 4-minute. It's drilling that, right? It's the old cliche in golf: drive for show, putt for dough. When you're there in goal to go, you're putting for dough. Basically, that's what matters.
Yeah,
and
this team's been pretty good in the red zone too.
It has, and Russell Wilson, for all the faults at various areas of the field, he has been good in the red zone. He's been very good. That makes up for a multitude of sins, which is why the discussion is so fascinating. It's very much in that gray area. It's not really a clear black and white thing. But a lot of life is in the gray area, right? That's just the nature of things.
That's true. But Sean Payton talked about how things are fixable.
Yeah.
I think this fits right in our conversation because none of this is out of their control. The Houston game sucked. They played like crap. They almost won. None of this is unfixable.
Right. And it's something we heard from PJ Locke, and it's something we heard from Mike McGlinchey. And so I asked Sean about this. One of the things is I could only send but so much of the response. The full response is like a minute and a half. So despite having his hoarse voice, I asked a question about the difference between fixable stuff and non-fixable stuff. And he started off by talking about when he was a young coach, realizing, okay, you can't work on everything. You have to kind of distill it down to the things that really matter, the things that you can do something about. And so it gets into stuff about teaching. And here's part of what he said in response to my question, despite his hoarse voice.
I think as a teacher, we always have to examine the why. Did we explain it well enough? Did we cover it well enough? How could we have done a better job ourselves? And so if you hand out a test to your students and 2/3 of them are getting C's and D's, then you have to look at yourself. So when we have a game like last week, it starts with looking inward, like, all right, whether it's the 1 o'clock start time on the, all of that, you gotta look as to, if we always say this in the staff meeting, if we played the game again, what are some things we would have done different? That kind of thing. So you have to look that way as a teacher.
I love that, man.
I do too.
I love that response. It's absolutely, it's what he knows. That's his wisdom coming through right there.
Yeah, and a lot of great coaches see themselves as teachers first, right? And that's why, for all that Nathaniel Hackett did wrong last year, the notion of having like a teacher on his staff that was called like an instructional designer to try to kind of create maybe some modules and methodologies to help the learning process for players. That was one thing that I thought was really intriguing. I thought they did well, but it is ultimately about teaching. And I love the when he talks about if you have C minuses and Ds, putting it on the teachers rather than the students.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's not being communicated here? What is being lost in what we're trying to convey? I thought that was a response that had a great deal of professional and emotional intelligence on his part. I think even though we know that he can be a hard ass out there, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen it in practice. I think that's the difference between, say, him and Vic Fangio in his 3 years on the job, is that when something goes wrong collectively, the focus is, okay, well, it's not that these guys, they're not getting it. It's, okay,
Right.
how do we relay this better as coaches and teachers? It's stuff like that for all the craziness and everything that's changed in terms of how how we view practice, how everything is different now. And you're like, okay, what's the point of this? Like, what's the point of painting the opponent's logo at the 50-yard line on the practice fields at Secure Health Training Center when you're playing a road game? Some of this is like, I'm not sure about that. But then when he talks this way and he kind of explains his process and his methodology and the way he sees teaching, it's like, okay, now that makes sense. And when you and I watch practice and we see how he stops practice to explain something specifically, I think back to OTAs when he took a huge chunk of a practice to work on the fair catch free kick, which is an incredibly rare situation, but he's talking about, hey, it's Monday night in Buffalo. It might be windy and that punt hangs up. You got to know to make that call so we can get this chance for a field goal. Like, that you see moments like that and you're like, okay, yeah, I get it now.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I get why this guy's been successful.
I'll take it being a hard ass if you're teaching that, if you're learning that as a player, you respond to that. And I won't get into it too much, Mace, because it's not for this show, but there's a difference between intellect and intelligence. Some people have intellect, but they do not have intelligence. Sean Payton has both, honestly. Yeah. He's got emotional intelligence, as you mentioned. You love to see it. Yeah,
things like that. It's like, okay, yeah, this is how this dude won so many games. Well, that and he had a Hall of Fame quarterback, yes. But remember, 2 years ago, they're 5-2 with Jameis Winston as a starting quarterback. And then despite cycling through Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill, Ian Book, that Saints team that probably shouldn't have been anywhere near 500 comes home with a winning record. I'd argue that even though they missed the playoffs, that was one of Sean Payton's top 2 or 3 coaching jobs. And I think he's doing a great coaching job with this team right now in getting them where they are from 1-5 to where we're having legitimate playoff discussions.
If they go to the playoffs, he's coach of the year.
It's him or D'Amico, I think.
We'll see if Houston even makes it. But
yeah, you don't think?
I'm not going to say Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott is so that Ty Dunn and Ty Dunn. At
6-6, Sean McDermott may not be long for Buffalo at this point. The way things are going right now.
And that Ty Dunn piece, you as a long form fan, I know, and it's a 20,000, 3 different pieces on the Sean McDermott stuff. Just read it. Check out Tyler Dunn. Worked with him at Bleacher Report. We were there at the same time back in the day. Slides, thumbnails, everybody. 32 slides. How do you make this into a slide? I still remember those conversations. Like, it's a check. It's a living, right, Mace?
Yeah. Yeah, but some of the stuff with Sean McDermott, like trying to explain cohesion of mission by talking about the 9/11 terrorists.
Yeah, comparing teamwork to the 9/11 terrorists. Sean McDermott should.
Some things you just don't do. Just don't. Like, no.
Even if even if, let's say, he brought up Flight 93 and he mentioned the teamwork of the passengers that caused the plane to crash in Pennsylvania, and that's still wrong. And he's bringing up the citizens on that plane. And let's go.
Yeah.
He brings up that. I mean, it's just, and then not admitting when he's made mistakes. The Chiefs game, that's really broken this team. I've been hard on Josh Allen this year. I'm going to be less hard on Josh Allen because his coach is messing up bad.
Yeah,
so I think coach of the year, Sean Payton, if they go to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's right up there. It's him again. Him. I think you have to have the D'Amico Ryans conversation in Houston. Shane Steichen in Indianapolis too. I mean, their plan A was Anthony Richardson taking lumps with him as a rookie and handing the ball a ton to a player I love, Jonathan Taylor. Well, Anthony Richardson's out for the year. You turn to Gardner Minshew. Jonathan Taylor's been injured off and on after he gets that big contract. And here the Colts are in prime playoff position. There's a case for Sean Payton. I just don't know if it's going to be as strong as it is for Houston, Indianapolis, because those teams, people going into the season, people thought those are bottom 5 teams head in. And another guy who's going to be in the mix, even though they had a bigger turnaround last year and they took another leap this year, is Dan Campbell in Detroit, who, of course, to go back to Sean Payton, protege. And doing a lot of the Sean Payton things. A little different because there's a little bit more, how shall I put this? Physical edge to them, maybe? A little, it's a little bit more, I don't know. That's
more rough house.
Yeah. Thank you. It's
something like
he's
that.
You'd say Dan Campbell as a coach is a little bit of a brawler, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sean Payton's all about technique. Right? Dan Campbell just getting you a headlock and give you a noogie. Anyway, Tyler says, what's the mood in the locker room? We've said it before, Mace, but it's a good, positive attitude and not reading their press clippings. Obviously, they lost last week. But when they were 1-5, the locker room feels the same at 6-6 as it did at 1-5. Steady.
Mm-hmm. Very steady. Now, the difference now from 1-5 is that at 1-5, it was steady, but there was still a little bit of, okay, where is this all going? What's the end game? What's the outcome of all this? Once you put together some wins, I think the Kansas City win was the one that changed everything. Because there you had the tangible evidence that everything that had been put in, everything that's different than almost any player in that locker room experienced, that okay, there's a why to it. This does get results, and since then, it's been different. Like you've got a locker room of guys that really, I feel like everyone's football IQ has gone up this year.
Yeah, and you said the key word. Sean Payton said the key word in the clip that we played, Mace. It's why. Yeah. As a writer, if you don't have conflict, you don't have a story, but you always have to tell the why. Players are really smart about football. Most players are really smart about football. So when you tell them something that maybe they're a little crossways with, if you can tell them the why so they understand why are you doing this, that makes it very palatable for any sort of player learning this.
And the other thing is also it's about understanding how the learning process changes generation to generation. Mm-hmm. The younger you get, the more you have the why coming in. Like that, it's not the what. It's not. This isn't like this isn't a drill sergeant Marine Corps time. This isn't Full Metal Jacket, right? Mm-hmm. It's not the what and the meaning. It's okay. You have to explain why things are what they are. But it's healthy for anyone of any generation to do this. I mean, we'll go to another Sean Payton clip here because when you examine not only the why, but you examine what you're doing, why it's working, why it's not working, you sometimes start, not questioning yourself, but coming up with some different ideas. And so it came up this week. What about scripting the start of the second half rather than the first half? He gets that. He's kind of explains his scripting process. And by the way, didn't you think it was interesting? Actually, you know what? Let's roll the clip, And then I want to bring up a point that really was fascinating to me about this. So let's roll that beautiful bean footage. By the way, it's Troy Rank asking the question of Sean Payton.
And it's Sean Payton giving Troy Rank some grief. So here you go.
Well, I haven't scripted yet. We're not in the second half.
Okay.
I haven't scripted the first half.
Okay, I didn't know where you were in that. Is that something you're still?
So here's what I normally do. I normally script the first 15. Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, obviously before the meetings, and then we go through it in the meetings. I'm not going to script the second half before the game starts, though. I would.
No, I understand.
I'll put 5 or 6 plays together
Right.
in at halftime, and then have my banana and go pee.
Okay, so I thought here's some method. First of all, yeah, we now know Sean Payton's halftime routine: have a banana, go take a leak, right?
Mm-hmm.
The second half script, it's basically in response to what you see in the first half. I think that's a really healthy way to go about it. What I think is interesting, though, is a lot of coaches like to do that script earlier in the week. Like, okay, we're gonna script this out Wednesday or Thursday, right? And then work on these plays. He does his script Saturday. And even like after the last walkthrough. So his scripts are a reaction to what he's seeing all week in practice and what's working and what's not, rather than saying, I want these 15 plays as my opener here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to drill
Come
these
hell or high water. That's what we're doing.
Hell or high water. We're going to drill this until he gets it right. His way of going about it is to see the week of practice work, find out what's clicking, what's not, and then write the script. That is, I think, a really brilliant move on his part. And again,
that
goes back to the teaching. Yes, goes back to the
teaching.
Yeah.
Compare to what we saw from Mike Shanahan. You and I were both around when Mike was out there, and Mike was what do you have that script ready Monday?
I think he had the script ready Tuesday, and they worked on it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah. Which is interesting, and we were kind of used to that, right? It's a script.
Yes.
It's a script. But now that we know he waits, it's fascinating to consider his strategy.
It really is. And I think I like these moments. Like today was an interesting press conference because that question about the script was the second one. My question was the last one. I didn't even know what I was going to ask until about halfway through the press conference, and I don't mind waiting until the end. I really don't.
Get the obvious questions out of the way.
And you know me, like my thought process in asking questions is probably it's different than anybody in there. I'm gonna admit that.
It's like 4D chess.
Well, and also I like to ask questions that I think that intentionally where I don't think the subject is prepared, not necessarily not unprepared for, but it's not something they're expecting.
Right.
Coaches have the PR people who will tell them, okay, this is
They'll
what
coach
you can
them up.
expect.
Yeah, this is what
coach them
what
up.
the guys are talking about. Yeah.
And so having worked on the inside and having been a part of, writing, okay, he might get asked the X, Y, Z, A, B, C, right? So I've helped kind of draw the guideposts saying, okay, you're going to be asked this. I think in terms of, okay, what would not be on that, right? It was like when I asked Nathaniel Hackett, you're a Star Wars guy, like, what's, what character do you identify with, right?
You should have said Jar Jar.
Anyway. If you know what, if he'd said Jar Jar, it's a different answer. I'm not sure I would have thought too negatively. I would have tried to look deeper. I would have just simply said, "Oh, well, you chose the worst character." No, but like, why did you? Yeah, why did you choose that? Like, why?
Right.
It's funny because you know what? I actually had the Phantom Menace on in the background a few nights ago when I was working because it was on like TNT or something.
There's like 30 minutes of a good 2.5 hour movie. There's 30 minutes worth watching.
Yes. And then it's just you have to, get through so much other stuff. Oh.
taxation and the federation and the politics. What did you say? Say hi to my sister Carrie in the chat room, everybody.
Okay.
Hi,
By the
Carrie.
way, yes. By the way, what kind of functional republic is it if a blockade of a planet is legal? Our blockade is
Exactly.
perfectly legal.
Exactly.
What? If that's the case, the republic probably needed to die or at least be reformed. My God. What's going on there? I mean, it's bad governance. No, or maybe it didn't. It was basically the republic with stuff like that was so weak. It was just begging for a a tyrant, an evil shaman to install a Sith theocracy for the better part of 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway.
There we go. I'm a proud attendee of the one and only Jar Jar Jam, where Ahmed Best, after the first Star Wars celebration, me and my buddy Kelly went. Carrie can retell that. So Ahmed Best had he was a DJ. He might still be a DJ. So he had like a little concert for about 200 people. I still have the flyer for it, and I got to hang out with Rick McCallum and Ray Park, right? Sitting there getting all blasted.
Yeah.
With some Star Wars legends, listening to Jar Jar spin some records.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Keenan Allen.
Real
Keenan
quick.
Allen is super, super special, right? Super talented, super special. The stats he has now are season-long stats in great years for receivers. Mm-hmm. So what are they going to do? How are they going to deal with him? They're likely not to have Surtain travel, my opinion.
Well, they haven't shown evidence that they're going to have PS2 travel with wide receiver 1 all year. That's clearly not what they do. So it's going to be on Fabian Moreau. It's going to be on Jaquan McMillan. It's going to take a village to defuse Keenan Allen, who, by the way, he's quietly putting together a Hall of Fame resume. Like, we're talking about another two good years here, and he's going to be sitting there with close to 1,100 receptions, 13,000 yards. I mean, he's stacking up some numbers here. He's 5-time Pro Bowler. It's going to be 6. He ought to be All-Pro this year. And on an offense that we talked about it, they've struggled to run the football. Austin Eckler not having his best year in terms of the ball carrying aspect of it, still a very good pass catcher out of the backfield. But despite coverage tailored towards taking care of Keenan Allen, he's still making plays. So what do you do? What kind of challenge do you have? PJ Locke talked about it.
And let's roll that beautiful bean footage.
Like we see, but they move him around a lot. A lot of teams is going to try to cloud him and put double coverage on him, so they do a good job of moving him around. But we got a few answers to that, and we're going to be expecting that. So, that's pretty much it.
Get creative a little bit. By the way, on Keenan Allen, he has 1,175 yards so far this season. Nobody else on the Chargers even has 400. He has 102 receptions. Only Austin Eckler among the rest of his teammates has more than 30. And no other wide receiver on the Chargers even has 30 catches this year.
Yeah, Josh Palmer's been banged up. He almost came back this week. They're going to shut him down for one more week. And then you'll be shocked to know Mike Williams got hurt.
And really, you look back at this season for all, they've been through a lot, but the Mike Williams injury, I think, really changed the trajectory of his offense. By the way, before he got hurt, of course, coming out of week 3 when they played the Vikings. Mike Williams in 3 games this year was averaging 6 catches and 83 yards a game. If you put that with Keenan Allen, this offense would have been really potent. And by the way, the first 3 games for the Chargers, they scored 34, 24, and 28 points a game. Since then, in the 9 games after that, they only have scored at least more. They've scored more than 20 points just 4 times, where they scored 24 plus all 3 times with Mike Williams in the lineup. But that's the name of the game, right? That's the nature of the game. Guys get hurt, you got to adapt. Chargers haven't adapted. I thought we'd see more out of Quentin Johnston this year. Honestly, I think
I loved
he's
him
been a
coming out of TCU, but
he's
he didn't
been
know
a
what he was
disappointment.
doing. He's coming on as of recent, but it's pretty bad when Brandon Staley has to say when he was benched that he wasn't benched, he was hurt, and then he played the next week. But he wasn't benched, he was hurt.
I mean,
Uh,
oh god. Anyway, so I was just looking at his snap counts here. I mean, he hit 77% last week, and he's at least 70% of the snaps in 5 of the last 6 games, after not reaching that in any of the first 6 games. But still, I'm just surprised the productivity isn't there.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
When they drafted him, I thought, oh crap.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna.
How'd
It's
you
like
let
you're
them
gonna
get
have
that guy?
You're gonna have Allen. You're gonna have Johnston. You're gonna have Mike Williams. Pick your poison.
Big old
Best laid
tight ends.
plans, right?
And Eckler's not healthy, as Eddie points out in the chat room.
Yeah.
We give him credit for playing, but he's definitely not himself.
Yeah.
In a contract year, I feel bad for him. So,
Well, maybe you bring him home in the off season.
chills.
Bring the pride of Eaton and Western State University. It is a university, right? Not a college.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Bring him back home to Colorado. Just saying. That'd be pretty
He'll
cool.
go back to Gunnison and work out. My son worked out with him when Liam went to Western for 2 years before he went to Washington State. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, there are
Austin-
only 4 Western State alums that have ever made the NFL.
Okay. Oh, geez. Austin, and it feels like I should know at least one more of these. Tell me who they are, baby.
Sam Seal, former defensive back for the Raiders and Chargers and briefly the Rams in the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
Justin Cross, who played tackle back in the 80s he was drafted by Buffalo. He played his entire career for Buffalo. And then wide receiver Tyrone Johnson, who played 1 game for the New Orleans Saints in 1994. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. I wouldn't remember any
by the
of
way,
those.
this is the second time I've gone on Pro Football Reference today and looked up players from a school because during practice, myself and Chris Thomason of the Gazette, who had a really nice dinner with last Saturday at a Thai place down in Houston, we were trying to figure out who was the best player to come out of the University of Richmond. And
Okay.
I made the argument that if he had played football rather than baseball, it would have been Brian Jordan. Remember, briefly a safety for the Falcons.
Yeah.
But he found his calling in baseball, and he had a very long career, mostly with St. Louis. Also played for the Atlanta Braves as well. I'm a fan of Brian Jordan. So
Well, hey,
there's your
it's-
baseball for the day, by the way, right?
There you go. Somebody asked
Yes.
where you think Otani's going, but
Well, everyone thought he was going to Toronto a few hours ago, and now it's like, okay, well, he's still at home.
it is hot
Toronto-
stove time, Mace.
Well, Toronto's interesting because the Blue Jays have basically an unlimited budget. They're owned by Rogers Communications. It's a nationwide team. I mean, if we're talking about what's the biggest real kind of market for him, it's probably the Blue Jays, believe it or not. So that would actually make a lot of sense. Me personally, selfishly, I just want him out. If he's going to leave the Angels, I don't want him coming to the National League. I want him in the American League. So, my Braves only have to worry about him in the World Series, right? I don't want him to go to LA. If he goes to the Dodgers, yeah, I don't want to think about that.
Oh.
I
All
hate
right.
LA. I'm going to LA this weekend. I'm sure I'll have a grand time,
Sure.
but I hate the Dodgers. Sorry for you Dodgers fans out there, but I hate them with the fire of 1,000 suns.
He is Andrew Mason. He's fired up. Anyway,
Yes, I'm fired up. Yes.
Get your stuff done so I can see you at the Nuggets game, and we'll be at the Nuggets game tonight. If you see us, say hi.
Our little
wander
company
around.
thing. Yep.
Yeah, a
we'll
little
be there.
company suite thing. So if you're at the Nuggets
Yep.
game, say hi to us, man. We love seeing you guys out in public. We appreciate each and every
Mm-hmm.
one of you for doing the YouTube things, like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. We are growing our YouTube channel, and we appreciate you for the help along the way. So help us out. Chat it in the comments. Comment
Thank
down
you.
below, please. It helps the algorithm, and we appreciate you. He's Mace. I'm Cease. OBT is a BFD. And stay tuned. And as always, would you please stay frosty?